Geeks and geekettes. It's Wednesday morning, time once again for Ask Chuck Dixon, where you, comic book fans, nerds, geeks, and aficionados of the ninth art, get to ask me, Chuck Dixon, questions about what I do for a living. And what I do for a living is I write comic books. You know the drill. Let's get to it. All right. Jason Manning asks, you've spoken before about writing with an invisible hand, such that people stay focused on the story and don't notice the writing itself. Do you think there's something analogous with comic artists? I was recently thinking that some artists are good at getting you to look at Batman and what he's doing versus getting you to stop and admire their drawing of Batman. Yeah, I mean, we all like great comic book art. I mean, it's undeniable. It's one of the reasons we're here. It's one of the reasons you're watching or listening to me right now. You like comics, and one of the attractions, obviously, the main attraction, the big attraction, the first thing that draws you to comics are the stunning visuals. You know, they're interesting and engaging, and let's face it, cool. So you're interested in that, and but there's also a story. You want the story, and you don't want the art to slow things down, or you don't want to read a series of pinups, if you know what I mean. And artists have to be able to draw everything. And there's nothing wrong with the art being beautiful and gorgeous to look at, so long as it doesn't get in the way of the story. And during the image era, we saw the sort of self-indulgence of some of the artists to draw, enormous splash pages or enormous double-page spreads that really didn't carry the story at all. They were just there as like display pieces. And quite frankly, a lot of those pages were composed to increase their value on the original art market. I mean, it's no secret. Come on, you artists. confess to the sin of wanting to make money off of your original artwork. I mean, who can blame someone? And I mean, I have my own little confession. I've written splash pages, quote unquote splash pages. Someone else drew them that I knew I wanted to buy the original of. So, there's a dirty little secret. So so this overindulgence in the art, but you have to remember it's a storytelling form. It's not a purely art form, even though the art is it's the big attraction. It's the sexy part of comics is the art. But you got to tell a story. You got to not slow the reader down. You've got to pace it out. You've got to give the reader all the information they need, but not too much information, so that they're not lingering or forget the fact that they're reading a story and just start looking at the pictures, because that's not what us comic book writers want you to do. We want you to read the story. An example of this is Joe Kubert had a thing he called the Big Money Panel. And he would have a panel or a page with lots and lots of detail on it that would still stir the story. It would sort of open the story up. It would increase the scale of the story. And he called it the Big Money Panel because he would spend more time on that panel or page than he would normally apportion to another panel. And that's why I called it, the Big Money Panel. It was the big payoff. But as you can see here, he's drawing your eye to this big image. He's doing what the self-indulgent artists are doing, but he's doing it in service to the story, if you can see what I mean. So yes, there is an invisible hand in comic art, and but it doesn't hurt to slow down and smell the roses every once in a while. Joshua Ignatowski, what would you say are the best superhero movies to show first to someone who you're trying to get hooked on the genre? Well, I gotta say, looking back over 2 decades of superhero movies now, I gotta say Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2 are the ones that I would go to. Probably my favorite is Iron Man, but if I was introducing someone to the superhero genre, I would go with these two, because they're both excellent adaptations, excellent interpretations of the original Lee and Ditko stories. Done cinematically, but everything's there. And why I say these are great to introduce to a new audience is because I remember seeing Spider-Man 1 in theater, opening weekend, and theaters packed. It was a huge hit, monster blockbuster movie. And there comes the scene where Uncle Ben dies. Well, you and I, if you're a comic fan, we all know that story. We've read that story retold a bajillion times. But when Uncle Ben dies, the audience's emotional reaction was visceral. They were shocked. They were saddened. They couldn't believe it. And I'm sitting there going, whoa. The majority of the people sitting here, they never heard this story before. They didn't know Spider-Man's origin. These are all newbies sitting here with me. And for that reason, I say this is, and no other superhero movie that I've ever seen had that visceral gut reaction to a scene. So I got to recommend this one strictly on that basis. And another recommendation for Spider-Man number 1 and 2 is my mother-in-law. I mean, at the time she was in her 80s. She's still with us. She was in her 80s or late 70s when Spider-Man 1 and 2 came out, and all of her friends from her retirement village she lives in down here in Florida, they all went to see the Spider-Man movies together, and they loved them. And my mother-in-law, who wouldn't pick up a comic book to swat a fly, her and her friends loved the Spider-Man movies. Couldn't wait for the next one. So that gets my recommendation. Whoa! Joshua gets a twin spin. A prestigious award worth absolutely nothing. For people looking to get into reading the Lucky Luke comic, which issues would you advise them to start with, and where would you recommend they go from there? Well, any Lucky Luke. They're all standalones. They're all many. I think over 60 of them are available now in English through Cinebook, which I do not get any money from. I'm always promoting Cinebook because I think it's a terrific company because they're reprinting an awful lot of Belgian and French comics in English for the first time with excellent translations. But any Lucky Luke is good. I would probably start with the ones written by Rene Goscinny and drawn by Morris, just because they're the classic Lucky Luke. But they're all good, and the wonderful thing about French comics is that even when they bring on new creators, those new creators stay with what made the characters popular in the first place. Even recent permutations of Lucky Luke that sort of draw it in a somewhat more realistic style stay with the feel and the format and the framework of the original Lucky Luke. They don't do what so many people in American comics do, which feel like they feel like they need to turn everything on its head. They need to tear it down, deconstruct the property in order to find new stories. The newer creators on Lucky Luke, and there have been quite a few. I mean, Morris died years ago. Goscinny died years ago. These new creators are loyal and faithful followers of Lucky Luke, even when they play a little bit with the art style and rest of it. It all has the same sense of humor, sort of blue sky stories, good-natured, fun, in some cases Western parodies, in other cases Western pastiches. But it's all good stuff. I would start anywhere. It's just a highly recommended series for just light comic book reading. This and Asterix, when you read them, there's no it's very clear why these series remain enormously popular throughout Europe. Triple spin, Joshua, look at you, young kid with a dream. In your opinion, what are the differences between a geek and a nerd? Well, we all hear these terms thrown around, and there's definitely a difference. There's a a stark difference between a geek and a nerd. And, you know, the starkest example I can think of is LARPing, which is a bunch of, you know, fun-loving nerds. These are nerds. These are not geeks. These are nerds. And you know, I'm not using these as a pejorative. I am a nerd about some things. I am a geek about some things. I think we all are. You know, it's like, you know, I'm kind of a nerd about Star Trek, but I'm a geek about Doctor Who. So, you know, that kind of thing. If you're already starting to see the distinction, aren't you? LARPing is a bunch of nerds, and they dress up in, you know, whatever kind of sword and sandal outfit, armor, shields, swords, and they go out and play at killing one another in medieval fashion. And as you can see here, the range of periods and weaponry and everything else, it spans centuries. Some of it even looks like it's made up. It doesn't matter, because LARP people just want to go out to the park and have a good time and fool around and play pretend. And that's fine. But, you know, it's deeply, deeply nerdy. Let's all admit it. LARPers, you know you're being nerdy. I know you're being nerdy. Nothing wrong with that. It's fun. Everybody's having a blast. Now, the geeks, Civil War reenactors, or any other kind of reenactor, these are geeks. These, you can't be out of period. You won't even be allowed on the battlefield if you have the wrong number of buttons on your tunic, or you have a weapon that's not in period, or you have a flag that wasn't supposed to be at that battle. You know, if your horse's harness isn't in period, you're gone, buddy. You ain't fighting. You ain't welcome here at Gettysburg or Bull Run. You're gonna, and it's, that's what a geek is. A geek is like deeply, deeply embedded in whatever their interest is. They're not just into it, they're into it. They're into it deep, and they know everything about it. I mean, when Gary Quapis and I did the Civil War books, we ran into this Civil War geeks. And there's no Civil War nerds. Civil War nerds are not allowed. You can't just play around at being interested in the Civil War. You got to get serious about it. You got to get model railroader serious. You got to get stamp collector serious about Civil War reenactment. And when Gary and I got into it, we were astounded at the minutia. You know, guys who were like interested in the second day of Gettysburg between 2:15 and 2:45 in the afternoon. I kid you not. And they knew everything about those 30 minutes. And that was their entire focus. And we ran into like a brick wall whenever we tried to appeal to these people, because as much research as Gary and I did, it was never enough. And that, my friends, is the difference between a geek and a nerd. And you know, you look deep into your heart, look deep into your soul, and you admit you're a nerd about some things, but you're a geek about others. And we're all the same. I'm the same. So again, no pejoratives, no judgments. No judgments here on Ask Chuck Dixon. But I will judge you if you don't subscribe. No, whatever. Do whatever you want, but I'd love it if you hit the subscribe button. If you already have, thank you. It's helping to build this channel, helping to gain interest, and bring in more people with more awesome questions. Okay, Jack Elmy. I came across an editorial by Catherine Ironwood. Catherine. She'll always be Cat to me. Cat Ironwood from 1986, which claims that you write your scripts longhand. Is this true? I love your work, whether it's longhand typed or smoke signaled. Yeah, I never learned to type. I still don't know how to type. Thank God for word processing programs, which allow you to make lots of mistakes. They're very forgiving, as all of you know. Yeah, I used to write them longhand. Now, I didn't hand them into Cat longhand. I had a typist. A friend of mine's sister was a professional typist, and I would, write them out on a legal pad and then send them to her, and she would do them up. I think 50 cents a page at the time. This is 1985, and but as I got more and more work, I was doing Airboy, I was doing 7 of Conan, I was starting to do this, starting to do that. She just gave up. And she said, I can't keep up with you. Because she was doing it part time. She had a full time job as a typist, and this was like extra work. And she said, that's it, I can't. And I mean, she quit cold turkey. She said, no, I can't. Don't even give me that story. I can't type it. I just don't have time. I'm in a panic. So I run down to the office supply store because there were no computer stores in 1986. This is when she gave up the ghost was 1986. So I go to the office supply store and I walk in and I said, I need a word processing machine that that I don't need to read a whole lot of directions, that I can start working on immediately, that's intuitive. And they sold me a Brother word processor. I came home, I skimmed through the manual, and I was working that very afternoon with lots of frustrations and lots of deletions and lots of cursing and lots of banging on my desktop. Eventually, I learned how to use it in my LaserJet printer. Woohoo! Because this is before email, even before faxing, and you actually had to type the stuff up myself, print the stuff up myself, and mail it off. FedEx. So yeah, long story short, I don't type. I hunt and peck, just like Stephen King. Jason Shepard, Rod Serling and Gene Roddenberry were masters of injecting commentary on the issues of the day, war, race, religion, sex, into science fiction and fantasy. Serling was quoted as saying, a Martian can say things a Democrat or Republican can't. That's very clever. I like that. I am curious which one you regard as having the greatest impact on popular culture. I just learned recently, Rod Serling and Gene Roddenberry, both World War II vets. I mean, most guys their age were, but they were combat vets. They actually saw a lot of combat, and which affects their world outlook, which affects their work, and certainly gave gravity, I think, to what they wrote. Serling did a lot of social commentary on his show, Twilight Zone. I think ultimately he has the greatest impact because of the way he looked at things. Now, I don't like most of Serling's written episodes. I think they were too preachy or too obvious, even to me as an adolescent and as a child, even watching them, they seemed kind of tedious and they were, hammering the point home too hard. I think the most successful of the Serling written episodes were The Monsters Are Coming to Maple Street, which kind of exposed what mob mentality is like, how rumors spread through a neighborhood. And I think, I grew up in a suburban neighborhood where these things would happen, where a rumor would start and it would spread through the neighborhood like wildfire without any proof of anything. And sometimes it was innocuous things, but still, everyone within a few hours all believed the same thing, whether it happened or not. With no proof, just the sworn testimony of someone who said that someone told their friends something that their cousin saw. And then boom, everybody in the neighborhood knows it. So yeah, this was a good episode of Serling. That's sort of a social commentary, more of a commentary on human nature, probably a commentary on the paranoia of the Cold War era. But it was an effective one. But the problem for Serling on Twilight Zone is the episodes we all remember, the episodes we consider classic, the episodes we consider the scariest because they were the best ones. None of them were written by Serling. None of them. Jerome Bixby, Richard Matheson, a few other authors wrote the classic episodes, the ones that scared the crap out of me when I was a kid, and gave me nightmares, but none of them were Serling. Serling concentrated on the social commentary, concentrated on the more quote unquote important stories, whereas I think most viewers were tuning in to get the wits scared out of them rather than be preached to. Now, Roddenberry, like I said, also a World War II vet. He was a little bit, a little bit more ham-handed in his social commentary. When they did social commentary issues on Star Trek, man, they just got right in your face with it. Kind of spoiled their own message by making it so obvious and preachy. I'm thinking particularly of this episode where the Enterprise comes across a race of people who are black on one side, white on the other, and one side of the planet hates the other because on one part of the planet, the people are black on the left side of their face, and on the other part of the planet, they're black on the right side of their face. And they just flogged this issue through the episode to you're like 10 minutes in going, I get it. Okay. People can be rotten. Racism is bad. What a stunning and brave stance to take. I guess they thought it was a brave and stance to take in the 60s, but I honestly, I lived through the 60s. I think the public was a little bit ahead of these people, telling them how they should act. I think people were already starting to get along, as Rodney King suggested we all do. Now, a show that really sucked at social commentary was Outer Limits. I love the Outer Limits, but it was an odd show. And if you've ever seen it, it's written in sort of a stilted, pretentious style that, Roddenberry and Serling, they never sunk to this level. It comes up with some good ideas. It's got some, great stuff. I love the way each episode is filmed. Obviously had a pretty big budget for a network sci-fi show, and it had some cool stuff, but it was a monster show. To me, it was a monster show. And every show, almost every episode has monsters or aliens or creatures in it. And that's what I watched it for. And, but even in the episodes that were pure monster, scary, chase, adventure kind of things, even in them, the control voice, which narrated the show, would come up with like this totally out of nowhere conclusion, that in almost every instance it was, the greatest power in the universe is love. And it's like, where was that in this episode? It's like the producer said, yeah, okay, this is a monster show, but we got to put something in there to make it look like, we're not idiots. So they just throw on this sort of little coda at the end of the show. It didn't have anything to do with what went on before. But yeah, they were the worst. Even I love the show. I loved all of these shows. Obviously, Twilight Zone, Star Trek, Outer Limits, big part of my childhood. But Outer Limits did it the worst. Key and Kurji, what is a better asteroid hitting the Earth movie? Deep Impact or Armageddon? The more serious one or the more comedic one? Well, Deep Impact is my least favorite. And again, just as there is a difference between geeks and nerds, there is a stark difference between these two movies. Deep Impact is largely the liberal version of the asteroid hitting the Earth story. I was appalled by this movie, and just the sheer idiocy of how they presented the story. It's supposed to be a big ass disaster film, and that's what everybody's coming to see. And it follows exactly the same plot line as Armageddon. A team of guys go out and try to stop the asteroid, and they fail. Big government project goes bad, and then from there, the world tries to decide how to deal with this horrible thing that's happening, and they deal with it in the way that I guess Harvard professors would suggest, and they hold a lottery in the United States. And if you win the lottery, you get to go in this, deep sanctuary that the government has dug under the surface of the earth. And hopefully everybody will survive there. But of course, some people don't have to win the lottery. There were people who were essential to go down in that hole. And apparently the list of essential people was like musicians and public school teachers. I mean, I would have excluded public school teachers from the lottery. I was like, here's finally a chance to get rid of you people. You stay on the surface. And they make it public where the sanctuary is going to be. And so, of course, millions of people show up trying to force their way in, out in the middle of like the Badlands or some desert. And all these people are out there. And the most appalling scene in the movie is when we see animals like from Noah's Ark. 2 of each animal is being brought down to the sanctuary, to try to survive, help them survive, post asteroid hit, post extinction event. And we see giraffes and zebras. I mean, are these essential animals? Do they really think that 2 zebras are going to repopulate the planet with zebras? Zebras aren't native to the United States. It was, and then how much money, time, space, and food that could have saved people were utilized in order to save 2 hyenas, 2 orangutans. I mean, wouldn't you like herd cattle and sheep and a whole lot of chickens down into that sanctuary who would be cheaper to keep? It's like the questions raised by this movie are just incredible. And of course, it's like a doomsday film with this incredibly dark ending where nothing succeeds, and we have to assume the human race is annihilated by the end of the film. So, and the asteroid strikes, and basically everybody dies, and the main characters just sort of give up, and they just go out and stand on a beach and watch the asteroid strike, and just wait for things to happen. No, and nobody prays. There's no prayer. There's nothing. It's just this is the end of humanity. It dies with a whimper. The only thing the movie had going for it was Téa Leoni, who a friend of mine once accurately described as the whole package. Armageddon could not be more different from Deep Impact. It's the same story, asteroid heading toward the Earth, but instead of a huge government project and involving NASA, it's determined that the only people on Earth who have the technology, the know-how, and the Yankee know-how to take out this asteroid would be oil rig workers, because they're working with basically the same equipment. They work with explosives, they work with drilling, they surveying, they would know where to place the explosives and how to place the explosives. And so they're trained by NASA, and Bruce Willis and his team are trained at NASA and sent along on a space shuttle to go take care of the asteroid because they're Americans. And in everybody's favorite scene in the movie, the oil riggers are just blue collar guys, hardworking guys, hard drinking, hard fighting guys, real Americans, real blue blooded American men, the kind of people they don't want to put in movies anymore. Everybody's favorite scene, I would assume, if you've seen this movie, is where they are negotiating terms with the government, because in the end they are, after all, working men. What's my paycheck going to look like? And so they're negotiating their pay and everything else. And Bruce Willis proposes to the government officials. He says, one other thing, we don't want to pay income taxes ever. So they got. I joined everyone else in the audience cheering that line when I saw the movie. So yeah, it's an entirely different movie. And if you ever see it, if you haven't seen it and you want to watch it, skip over all the scenes with Ben Affleck and Liv Tyler. The sort of tacked on romance angle just slows the movie down to a crawl, and it's just cringeworthy every frame of it. So you want to avoid that. But yeah, that's the difference. There couldn't be a bigger difference between these two movies. And yeah, Armageddon is silly and goofy. It's Michael Bay at his most self-indulgent, but it's still fun, and I like the message, and I like the optimism, as opposed to the dreary, let's give up and just die. ethos of Deep Impact. But and it's got Bruce Willis. Enough said. Kane Dorr. I've yet to purchase anything from the Rippaverse. I've been watching YouTube and reading their emails, but that's it. The Horseman will be my first purchase. For those of us who are not familiar with the story universe, what kind of world will the Horseman be operating in? How will this character stand out and be different from the characters already being published in a book somewhere? Well, the Horseman is by me and Joe Bennett, and it's kind of funny. I just saw the final finished pencils of the final pages yesterday. Joe sent them to me. Stunning. Joe's amazing. And the Horseman is, it came from Joe saying, the Rippaverse needs a Batman / Punisher type character, a ground level guy without superpowers trying to get along in a world of superheroes. And I thought, well, that's an awesome idea. And so I worked up a scenario of who this guy was. And he's in the same masked vigilante vein as Batman. He's in the same kind of pissed off blue collar guy vein of the Punisher, but with a difference. His origin is very different. His what he wants is different. What drives him is different. But you're going to get all the same stuff. You're going to get instant retribution and lots of bad guys getting their heads caved in and shot and thrown off buildings. All the things we love about masked vigilantes. But I like to think it's got a little bit more heart than Punisher. I think this guy's more sympathetic and relatable than Frank Castle. Although for some reason I relate heavily to Frank Castle, but this guy's he's lovable. The Saska sisters are they're crazy about this guy. So I think you'll enjoy it. The Rippaverse universe it's like other superhero universes. You have what we're calling exceptionals or excepts, and they are the superpowered people, and some of them superpowered by birth, mutation, or scientific methods. Some of them turned into superheroes on purpose by the government. Standard superhero fare. I mean, we're not reinventing the wheel here, but what we do have is a universe with an alternate universe from our own reality that has a very different history. It gets to where it is in a very different way than our own history, and a lot of that will be revealed. Much of it in a project, my next project coming out after the Horseman, from Rippaverse, which I can't talk anymore about because Eric loves to keep secrets. He's a tight-lipped guy who does not like teasing. So, but I'm teasing here. I am doing a project after the Horseman, which is I've seen pages from, stunning, and then Joe Bennett and I have a follow-up project coming out right after that Joe is starting on next week. Which you're going to love, which is in a different sort of vein, a different area of the superhero genre. But I think you'll dig it. And as I said to Joe, as successful as the Alpha Core campaign was, I think the Horseman campaign is going to be even bigger because I think the Horseman's got a lot of appeal. And I think once you see some of the pages, they're just mind-blowing. Joe is that rare mix. I talked earlier about the invisible hand of an artist. He's that rare mix of a guy who is just an amazing draftsman, just amazing artist. He creates these mind-boggling images, but he is so damn good at storytelling. I mean, he is a student of cinema, and he really gets it. I've done very few action scenes that flow the way when he blocks them out, they just flow perfectly, just like a movie on paper. Rodolfo DiMaggio, Graham Nolan can do it. A lot of guys can't, but just beautiful, beautiful stuff. I think you're going to love it. R.B. Probst. You've mentioned page rates in several episodes now. This got me thinking, when you were at companies where you were doing both ongoing monthly work and one-off work, miniseries, one-shots, etc., did your page rate apply equally across the board, or did you have a page rate for your monthly work and separate page rate specific for your one-off work? Um, no, I had a page rate, what they call in the movie business your quote. I had a rate at Marvel, I had a rate at DC, and it didn't matter what I was working on. The If it was Scooby Doo or Batman, I got the same rate. Now I understand that in later years, like on some of the, like the kids line stuff, they lowered that rate, so you had to take a lower. But I didn't write any kids stuff for DC in that period. I don't think Marvel did the same thing. The only time your page rate changed is if you did a special project. And I mean, I wrote uh, a comic book, Superman meets NASCAR. That was a special project done for Kmart. And I wrote a Batman story for a handout at Six Flags Great Adventure. They would give you a booklet with a map in it, and there was a new Batman ride, and so they had me do a Batman comic, like an 8 pager, and so the map was actually in a comic book, and they would pay rate and a half. So whatever my rate was, I would get 50% more for a special project because there were no royalties on the special projects. I wish there were, because man, that Superman NASCAR book sold big time. It sold with a NASCAR T-shirt. They sold a ton of them. And on the Six Flags, I think they printed like 10 million of them. And boy, the royalties on that would have been sweet. I'd probably have a house in the Bahamas. But anyway, um, and the special projects were always fun. Paul Kupperberg was always the editor on special projects, and he was always so much fun to work with. And I remember particularly Scott Beatty wrote a Batman animated comic for Mucinex that was hysterically funny. uh, Scott couldn't get all his best jokes through, but they were just fun to work on. Just sort of, they were sort of like writing, Hostess Pie ads, just sort of having goofy fun with the superheroes. But yeah, that's the only time the page rates would change. Otherwise, it was blanket rate. Today, my rates depend on who I'm working for. I negotiate up and down. Lower page rate if I get back end, higher page rate if there's no back end, and so on and so forth. Gentle Savage, Mr. Dixon, are you a fan of any board games or card games? If so, which one? Well, when I was a kid, I played a lot of board games. My favorites were Dogfight, which was a World War One aviation game. Play that out on the front stoop, and this was during the World War One aviation, the inexplicable World War One aviation craze of the 1960s, and just played the hell out of this game. And another one often played on the front stoop or at the dining room table was Stratego, sort of dumbed down chess for kids. And I dug this game hours and hours and hours. And of course, Monopoly and a bunch of the others. But Stratego and Dogfight were my go-tos. When we were tired of playing Dogfight, we played Stratego and back and forth. Now I don't play a lot of board games now. My youngest son is really into board games. I mean, really into board games. So usually on holidays, we'll spend some time playing Catan. But he must have like 100 board games, and has a circle of friends that play, and everything else. Recently, he and I drove from Pennsylvania to Florida, and we stopped at a bunch of board gaming places, board game stores, which I didn't know existed, all the way down to Florida. We stopped at 2 or 3 of them. And man, if you're ever in Annapolis, Third Eye Games and Third Eye Comics, man, you got to go there. Those places are like Walmarts for this stuff. Just amazing. I usually walk out of a comic shop buying nothing. I think I dropped $1,000 at Third Eye. because they had stuff I'd never seen before. But yeah, I'm not really that into board games or video games or anything like that these days. But I will, I'll play Catan. It's fun. It's challenging, and I enjoy it most when my wife wins. Dan Perrin, as a fellow collector of original art, primarily commissions, I'd love to hear more about your original art collection. How many pieces do you have? Are they mostly from work you've done? What are your top 3? And are any displayed? Yeah, I display stuff in my office, and then in my youngest son has a whole bunch of art hanging in his room because I don't have as much wall space as I used to. My office is much smaller than it used to be. I had an office in Pennsylvania that was like a wing of the house. Today I'm in what they generously here in Florida call a den. It's more like a walk-in closet. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I have some pieces. Yeah, primarily my collection is stuff that was gifted to me by artists that I worked with. Alcatena gave me this pitch piece for Detective Comics Annual number 7, which was turned into the cover. In addition, he gave me 3 other pitch pieces, one each for Catwoman, Robin, and the Joker. And yeah, obviously, I love this piece. It's gorgeous. One of my earliest pieces was Hilary Barta gave me this at a Chicago Con, one of the first ones I went to. And I'd asked him to draw me a picture of Plastic Man, and he did this, beautiful, beautiful piece. Plastic Man and Woozy, and I think that's Hillary in the background surfing. And I treasure that. It hangs on my office wall. I can turn my head right now and see it. Another one gifted to me was Ernie Colon was running late on his Airboy arc, and in order to bribe myself and Bo Smith not to complain about it, he sent us covers, original covers. And this is a painting. This is like color pencils and dyes, and it's huge. It's drawn much bigger than a normal comic book cover, and it's a little more square. There's a lot cut off when they did the cover itself. And again, I can turn my head and see it right now. It's a beaut. We're off with DiMaggio GCPD cover. I think I have 2 covers from this series. Inked by Bill Sienkiewicz. I got a lot of Rodolfo artwork. I was always asking him for stuff, or he was always sending me stuff. He was very, very generous giving away artwork, which he shouldn't have been. Stuff's worth money. He didn't seem to care about that. A cover I'm looking at right now. It's Graham Nolan, Detective Comics cover. One of my favorite covers at Graham. My second favorite Detective Comics cover Graham ever did. I mentioned to him how much I love this cover, and he sent it to me. And very generous. Thank you, Graham. And I got a lot of Graham in my collection because we worked together so many times. A lot of Graham, a lot of Gary Quapis because of the length of time we, worked together. This is a Punisher War Journal cover featuring Payback and Lynn Michaels, the female Punisher, both characters I created as drawn by Michael Golden. I bought this cover off of John Dell, the inker, while we were at CrossGen. He was trying to raise money to buy a complete Michael Golden Wolverine story. He wanted to buy the whole story, and he was trying to raise money. So I bought this. I bought this page. I bought this cover from him. I'm very glad I did. I love this cover, and I love the fact that it features 2 characters I created by Michael Golden, for God's sake. This is a piece I just bought on a whim back in the 90s when I was buying a lot of original art. It's John Byrne. It's a Superman and Batman, a particular version to go with a Kenner toy that was being released. It was a special comic book drawn by John with special action figures with different accoutrements than they usually have. And I just thought it was a cool piece, classic. It's John Byrne. It's Superman and Batman. Why not? Another piece by Kike Alcatena. It's I did a lot of these where I put 2 pages together. It's a 2-page continuity from a What If we did. What if the new Fantastic Four had remained? And I love this page because it's got the Sinister Six on it. and it ends with a gag about Herbie the robot. So I had to have it. I said, Kike, please, I need those pages. Another Kike piece, which I absolutely adore. I treasure this piece. This was a pitch piece for an Elseworlds Viking Batman that got rejected. An Icelandic saga featuring Batman. And they said no. Can you believe it? Look at this art. Can you believe they turned this down? And Kike, he had sent me the pitch piece to take to DC so they could see the original. And when we were done, he says, you can keep the original. I'm eternally grateful. Thank you, Kike. Here's two more pieces. Michael Golden. It's my very first issue of Detective, covered by Michael Golden. I bought it from Michael Golden, and he made me promise, he made me sign a letter saying I would take this page to my grave, that I would never sell it. And I never did, Michael. There it is. It's framed, hanging on my son's wall. Next to it is a Green Arrow page by, again, Rodolfo DiMaggio that I really like, featuring our Were Jaguar character, which I think, Rodolfo just knocked out of the park. Big, scary beast guy. Another John Byrne piece. I love John Byrne's work on Namor, and I bought these two pages. They're two continuity pages because I just dig the storytelling. I like the art. I like the storytelling. Two-page continuity from Graham Nolan. I just dig the big figures on this page, and it's Bane. So I said, Graham, I gotta have those pages. And he gave me a good price. He might have given them to me. I don't know. He's given me a lot of artwork. Graham's been very, very generous over the years, sharing his artwork. And I always appreciate it because, I'm not one of those writers. I'm very shy about asking for artwork. I remember telling John Romita Jr., I said, I want a page from our Punisher Warzone arc. And he said, I'll give you one. I said, no, John, I want to buy one. Because if you give me one, you'll give me a crappy page. But if I buy one, I can get a good one. And he thought that was funny because it's true. But I generally don't ask for pages unless I'm like a friend with the person or I have some sort of a personal relationship with them. And even then, I offer to buy it. But most often they just say, no, I'll give you the page. So. Another one I treasure is I have several Alex Toth pieces or Toth pieces. This is my favorite. It's the first and last page of a creepy story from Creepy called The Stalkers. And I dug this story so much when I was a kid, and I bought these pages, I think, 20 years apart. I think the first page cost me $50. And the last page cost me like $750. So today, I don't know what they're worth. I don't care what they're worth. I'm not into it for that. Hey, one more thing. Actually, I should go back and explain. And I have other artwork. I have artwork in folders and stuff like that. I've had so many people be generous and give me stuff that I've got folders of stuff. I've got a lot of Russ Heath art that I've bought myself. And I'll tell you one thing, if I knew back then, back in the 70s, what I know now, I would have worked 3 jobs and spent all the money buying original artwork. Because back then you could buy Kirby pages for $35. I would have just bought artwork. I would have become an original art dealer and held on to some stuff. And I'd have that island in the Bahamas today. Not just a house, I'd have a whole island. Because this stuff is like increased in value. I mean, screw IRAs. Buy original art. Well, not now because the prices are ridiculously high. You can't touch the stuff. But back in the day when a guy making minimum wage could still buy original artwork now and then, I should have bought a whole lot more. Okay, one more thing. I got a question a number of weeks ago about alternatives to putting the stuff in cardboard boxes. And I talked about the Sterlite show-offs that I use that aren't made anymore, and I'm always looking for alternatives. And these are great. They're perfect. They're perfect comic book size, as you can see, and they keep that pulpy comic book smell, which so many people say they like. I don't. I have sinus problems, so I'd rather they were hermetically sealed where my closet doesn't smell like a pulp mill. But these aren't available anymore. Starlight doesn't make them. So I saw these at Sam's Club. I thought I'd recommend these to you all because I care about your comics. I don't want them to rot away and have those ugly long boxes, those cardboard boxes in your closets. So these are bigger than comics, but they seal. They're airtight and they're clear, so you can look inside them. And they seem pretty good. They're just like standard file boxes, but as you can see, they're kind of reinforced. They're very sturdy. You can probably stack these 5 or 6 high and no problem. So I thought I would suggest it. They are the stacking storage box. And I saw them at Sam's Club. Yes, Chuck, mention where you saw them, not just that you saw them. I saw them at Sam's Club and they were a pretty good price and they would hold a crap ton of comics, wouldn't they? Hey, Levon's back. Levon Scourge, Book 12 of the Levon Cade series, Vigilante Justice, shooting and killing and punching and chasing and all kinds of crazy stuff as Levon travels across 2 continents in order to hunt down the men who are threatening his family and get rid of them once and for all. So if you want to check that out, you head on over to Amazon. It's on Kindle. It's in paperback. It'll be on audio very, very soon. And that's it for me this week. I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank you for listening, subscribing, liking, spreading the word. And I'll see every single one of you, I hope, down the road.